Hi everybody, this is Nick, and this is my review of Atlas Shrugged Part II, The Strike. It came out last weekend, October 11th. I got the chance to see it. And if you're able to view video annotations and click on them, I'll create a clickable link to my review of Atlas Shrugged Part I, which I made last year. So on to it. Ayn Rand's ideas are more important and relevant today than they were even when Atlas Shrugged Part I was released last year. A moral defense of true capitalism, which is essential for a healthy economy and society, is almost completely absent from modern film. Hollywood is filled with vapid apologists who are professional only in pandering to the status quo and are quite successful at it. The ideas in Atlas Shrugged, unfortunately, are the antithesis to the ideas of modern popular culture. That's what makes it so important. However, these ideas of a great philosophy and a great writer are held at the mercy of the creators of this film and are, in my opinion, tortured to death. It's a very different film from Part I, which I very much enjoyed. Here, and please forgive me if I pronounce names wrong, here director Paul Johansson has been replaced by John Pooch. The writers have all been replaced. All of the actors from Part I have been replaced with mostly inferior actors. Taylor Schilling and Grant Bowler, who both knocked it out of the park playing Dagny Taggart and Henry Reardon in Part I, have been replaced by Samantha Mathis and Jason Beghe, who fall short of the mark. Mathis portrays none of the youthful energy, optimism, or even the business professionalism that a Dagny Taggart needs. Beghe portrays Hank Reardon with all the charm of a slimy New Jersey mobster, which is so spot on that when Floyd Ferris comes into Reardon's office with the intent to blackmail, I fully expected the scene to end with Reardon dragging Ferris's body out of the trunk of a Crown Victoria and dumping it into a swamp. So, are there at least strong supporting actors? Not really. In fact, pretty much every actor was inspiration for a facepalm. Eddie Willers is now an ex-NFL nightclub bouncer. Francisco d'Anconia is that midlife crisis guy you'd see driving a Ford Mustang in a Viagra commercial. Lillian Reardon looks like one of those no-nonsense CSI chicks who will kick your ass if you look at them wrong, or maybe some Russian sleeper spy. The villain James Taggart, who's supposed to be an old-looking, tired-looking sleazebag, looks, well, likable, which is just wrong. He could be that young dad in the park with a jogging stroller and an iPod who smiles all the time. Any actors I liked? R.I. Gross as Ken Daniger was okay. Diedrich Bader as Quentin Daniels was okay. Paul McCrane as Wesley Mouch was probably, actually, the best part. Maybe Robert Picardo as Dr. Robert Stadler was pretty good, just because I liked him as the Doctor in Star Trek Voyager. Sadly, the scenes don't come close to making up for the poor acting. I do realize it's very hard to pick and choose what gets in a film and what gets cut when the original novel is so long and complex, but I just wasn't buying any of the scenes in this movie. For instance, in the book, the side story of James Taggart and Cheryl Brooks illustrates what happens when a person instigates a relationship by pretending to be someone they're not. James Taggart, the ultimate second-hander, cares more about what others think of him than what he thinks of himself. It doesn't matter to him that he's a moocher, as long as he can remain a hero in the eyes of other people. Cheryl, believing James to be the brains of the Taggart Transcontinental Railroad, marries him for what she believes to be his values. When she finds that those values are nothing more than the false public perception of him, she ultimately goes crazy and runs over a railing into an icy East River. In the movie, their meeting at the dime store is rushed, the entire scene taking less than 2 minutes, and then the next time we even hear of Cheryl is at their wedding sometime later. I really wish that if they were going to do this side story so poorly, they would have just left it out altogether. For the sake of the story, though, it really needed to be put in the movie, since one of the most important scenes in the book is the Taggart-Brooks wedding. Now let me say a little bit more about that. The wedding scene in the book is important for several reasons. First and foremost being the deepening of character relationships. Dagny is confronted and challenged by both Lillian and Cheryl and holds her ground. Reardon is beginning to see the contradiction in his romantic relationships. Francisco d'Anconia makes his first Galt's Gulch pitch to Reardon in the form of the legendary money speech. The wedding in the book ends with everybody learning the news of the explosion of the d'Anconia copper mine, panicking for their stocks in the company, and emptying the room of all but our three protagonists, Dagny, Reardon, and d'Anconia, staring at each other from their respective ends of an epic love triangle. In the movie, a half-hearted attempt at solidifying these relationships is made. The money speech, some of the most central and philosophically important pages in the book, is tragically shortened to about a minute and a half. I do think that the speech was theatrically well done, but it could have stood to be more complete. Omitting the bulk of the money speech was perhaps the most disappointing aspect of the entire film. It was shortened in such a way that one wonders at the end if d'Anconia was serious or just making a joke to get some laughs from the crowd. Also, in the movie, the room never clears out. The wedding goes on as normal, which obviously changes the scene dramatically. Another big scene is the courtroom, where Reardon and an absent Daniger are on trial for a business transaction the government determined was illegal. This is another place where the philosophy could shine in Reardon's speech, and it doesn't. The speech was also cut short. Very short. And there were smaller scene discrepancies as well that really ground my gears. Now, it may seem pretty nitpicky, but as an example, there's a scene where Dagny is waiting for an inordinate amount of time in the outer office of Ken Daniger. Her purpose is to urge him not to quit and disappear. We later find that John Galt was in the room urging Daniger to do just that. In the book, Dagny doesn't dare walk in on his meeting because of the sanctity of his privacy was stronger than any door, or something to that effect. I don't have the actual quote in front of me. The fact that Dagny wouldn't enter his office uninvited spoke volumes about her character. In the movie, though, she gets impatient and barges right in. I could go on with more examples of scene failure, but I think you get the picture. Too much effort was put into squeezing in the plot of Atlas Shrugged, while too little effort was put into highlighting the philosophy of Atlas Shrugged. This is ultimately the downfall of the film. So, does Atlas Shrugged at least have some cool visuals and kick-ass action scenes? No. Despite having a larger budget than Part 1, Part 2's greatest opportunity for some eye-candy action, the plane chase into Galt's Gulch and the climax of Part 2, is passed up. We have some lazy CGI and some close-ups of Dagny piloting her plane, and while the plane is zigzagging and dodging mountains in the Colorado Rockies, Dagny's acting is so lackluster it looks as though she's sipping her morning coffee while signing on to AOL to check her email in 1995. I'm not sure fans of Atlas Shrugged will be blown away by this movie. I know I wasn't. And from the perspective of people new to Rand's ideas in the world of Atlas Shrugged, I fear that Part 2 won't compel them to pick up the book. Even more disconcerting is the way that the philosophy is presented, which could possibly go so far as to misrepresent Ayn Rand and set back the struggle for political and economic freedom which Atlas Shrugged attempted valiantly to achieve. What I mean by that is this. The movie does a decent job of portraying business and free market capitalism as a good thing. What it doesn't portray is the degree to which modern business is corrupted by government. To one who is unfamiliar with the book, it may seem as if Atlas Shrugged is praising Wall Street, banker bailouts, social insecurity funneling et al. While I know that the book's intention is to show the terrible consequences of government regulation, it praises big business without any explanation as to why the gap between the rich and the poor is getting larger, why so many people are unemployed, why gas prices are so high, etc. If people don't have an understanding of this going into the movie, then every scene and line where big business is praised could come across as laughable. That being said, if you're a fan of Atlas Shrugged, this movie is still a part of history, and you should see it. But maybe wait for the DVD. So that's my review for Atlas Shrugged Part 2. I hope it was helpful. Thanks very much for listening. If you could, please take the time to rate and comment this video, and have a wonderful day.